We finished chapter 4. Now let's start chapter 5. There are two parts in chapter 5. In the textbook, the first part is unemployment, and the second part is inflation, price level. Now I want to start with the price level and inflation. So let's start the second half of the textbook, and let's call it chapter 5.1. Because I want to continue on the price level at the end of the chapter 4. So the variable on the y-axis is price level in the aggregate market. Now we need a measure of the price level. In chapter 4, what is the measure that we used for price level? The answer is GDP deflator. Okay, so GDP deflator measures the overall price level in the economy. But the problem is, do you care about the price of an, say, escalator? Or do you care about the price of a truck? Or the price of an airplane? Probably not, right? Because you don't really use those. Well, you may care about the air flight tickets price, but not the airplane price. Therefore, GDP deflator may not be a measure of price level that you and I really care. We are consumers. Therefore, in chapter 5, we want to introduce another measure of the price level that we may care more, which is called the Consumer Price Index. This is a measure of price level that the consumers care. Okay? So CPI is the Consumer Price Index. It measures the overall price level of the goods and services consumed by a typical urban family. Again, CPI is an index. Any index must have a base value. Just like you are 6 feet 2 inches tall, you have to define how tall is 1 inch. Then you can tell people how tall you are. Same thing. The CPI is defined to equal to 100 for the base period. Remember in chapter 4, the base period GDP deflator is always equal to 100. That's the definition of an index. So the index, any index, is equal to 100 in the base period. Okay, that's the definition. You have to define the units first. How do we construct the Consumer Price Index? There are 3 stages. First, you have to select the CPI basket. You're selecting a basket of goods that are consumed by a typical urban family. Say, for example, in our example, the typical urban family spends 41.4% of their income in housing. Say, for example, the mortgage payment or the rent. And they spend 16.4% in transportation. Say, for example, your car loan, your gas expenses, or your bus fare. Okay? And they use 14.9% of their income in food and beverage. Remember, this is for typical urban family, not for you. I know you spend a lot of money on beverage. Alright, so we select the CPI basket. the second stage is to conduct a monthly price survey. So they call, say for example, Walmart and ask, okay, how much is your apples? And they conduct a survey on this basket of goods to see what their prices are. Now you have the basket and you have the price of the goods and services in this basket. The next stage is to use this basket of goods and their prices to calculate the consumer price index. Now let's see this example. Let's use 2015 as the base period. So in 2015, the typical urban family consumes 10 oranges and 5 haircuts. And in 2015, the price of oranges is $1 each. And the price of haircuts is $8 each. Now the next year, 2016, the CPI basket is still oranges and haircuts. They consume X number of oranges and Y number of haircuts. Why don't I give you a specific number like 10 and 5 here? The answer will be clearer later because we don't care what these numbers are. Now in 2016, the price of oranges doubles. It goes from $1 to $2. And the price of haircut also increases from $8 to $10. Now remember the first stage to construct the CPI index, the CPI, selecting the CPI basket. All right, now, what is the CPI basket in this example? The answer is 10 oranges and 5 haircuts. This is the CPI basket. This is not the CPI basket. Why? Because we want to choose a basket of goods and to see how the cost of buying this basket of goods changes from one year to another. Let me say it again. We want to know if we buy exactly the same goods, exactly the same basket of goods, will it be more expensive or cheaper in 2016 than in 2015? That's what we want to know. We want to know the change in price of the goods and services that we consume. Therefore, what we have to do is to fix the quantity, the basket of the goods to see how this basket of goods and services are more expensive or cheaper. Now, recall in chapter 4, when we are calculating real GDP, what was the purpose? The purpose was to see the change in real production. We want to know whether we produce more apples than before. Therefore, we don't want the price to affect our conclusion. Therefore, we fix the price level to see the change in real production. So when we are calculating real GDP, we assume that the price level doesn't change from one year to another. But calculating CPI is totally opposite. Because what we want to know is the price change. Therefore, we have to fix the quantity. We have to assume that we consume exactly the same basket of goods and services. Can you see the difference between these two? Okay, now, the first stage is to select the CPI basket. The answer is this is the CPI basket. Because 2015 is the base period. The second stage is to do the price survey, right? So in 2015, the survey says price of oranges is $1 each, and the price of haircuts is $8 each. And the survey in 2016 says the price of oranges is $2 each, and the price of haircuts is $10 each. The third stage, use the survey prices and the CPI basket to calculate the cost of buying this CPI basket in different years. So let's do it. What is the cost of buying 10 oranges in 2015? The answer is 10 oranges, $1 each, so it's $10. What is the cost of buying 5 haircuts in 2015? The answer is $40, 5 times 8. So in order to buy 10 oranges and 5 haircuts in 2015, you have to pay $50. Now, how about in 2016? If you want to buy this basket, that is, if you want to buy 10 oranges in 2016, how much money do you have to spend? The answer is 10 oranges, $2 each, that is $20. Then how much do you have to pay to buy 5 haircuts in 2016? The answer is the price of haircut is $10 each, therefore the cost is $50. Did you see that? We don't use this number at all because this is not the CPI basket. That is why I put X and Y. We don't need them. So the total cost of the CPI basket at 2016 price is $70. Now, let's calculate CPI. CPI in 2015 and CPI in 2016. Now, the first question is, what is the CPI in 2015? Answer? 100. Why? Because CPI is defined as 100 in the base year. Because we use 2015 as the base year, therefore the CPI in 2015 is defined as 100. That's the unit that you are using. Okay? Now, in 2015, the cost of the CPI basket is $50, which we just calculated. And in 2016, to buy exactly the same basket, you will have to spend $70. All right. Now, we define CPI in 2015 as 100. That is, CPI represent this $50. 100 represent this $50. Then the question is, then what is the CPI in 2016 that represent the cost of $70? So it's like you take your little brother to Chuck E. Cheese's, and then in 2015 you spend $50 to buy 100 chips. You know, in Chuck E. Cheese's you cannot use quarter. You have to use quarter to buy the Chuck E. Cheese's chips. You cannot play with quarter. So you take your little brother to Chuck E. Cheese's and then you spend $50. You give the agent $50 and they give you 100 chips to play in the machine. So you use $50 to buy 100 chips. Now you have $70. How many chips can you buy? Well, $50 to buy 100 chips. So $1 can buy 2 chips. Now you have $70. How many chips can you buy? 140. Does that make sense? Well, another way to do it is you can use $50 to buy 100 chips. Then you have $70. How many chips can you buy? Do the cross products. 50 times question mark is 70 times 100. So question mark is 70 times 100 divided by 50, which is 140. Or you can do this. $50 to buy 100 chips. $70 can buy how many chips? Same thing, do the cross product. 50 times question mark is 70 times 100. You get exactly the same answer. Therefore, the CPI in 2016 is 140. Therefore, to buy exactly the same basket of goods and services in 2015, you have to spend $50. In 2016, you have to spend $70. Or in 2015, you have to spend 100 chips. In 2016, you have to spend 140 chips. So clearly, this basket of goods is more expensive in 2016 than in 2015. How much more expensive? Well, that is the inflation rate, right? That's the inflation rate that we learned in chapter 4. Remember what is the inflation rate? The inflation rate is the percentage change in the price level. That is the change from which number? Say for example, now CPI goes from 100 to 140 from 2015 to 2016. So how much is the change? It is 40. Change from what? Change from 100. Therefore, change from 100 by 40, that is 40% of change. 40% of change in price level. Therefore, the inflation is 40%. More intuitively, remember that in 2015, to buy the basket of goods, we spent $50. In 2016, we have to spend $70 to buy exactly the same amount of goods and services. Then how much more expensive is this basket of goods from 2016 to from 2015 to 2016? The answer is the price goes from $50 to $70. How much is the change? The answer is $20. Change from what? Change from 50. Therefore, the percentage change is 40%. Same thing. All right. Again, price level is the overall price of the aggregate market. We have to measure the price level. So far, we introduced two measures of the price level. The first one is the GDP deflator in chapter 4. GDP, what is P? P is the product, right? Gross domestic product. So this deflator reflects the overall price level of all the goods and services produced in the economy. And we say that, well, it may be too broad, that we don't really care. So what we care is consumers' price index. That's what we introduced in chapter 5, part 1. What other price indices that are available? Say, for example, we can calculate the chained CPI. So the concept is exactly the same as chained real GDP. Okay? Now, the most popular one used by the US central bank and the government is called PCE, the Personal Consumption Expenditure Deflator. What is this? Remember, GDP is C plus I plus G plus X minus M, right? So PCE is the price level of this part, consumption. So it's broader than the consumer's price index, but it is narrower than the GDP deflator because it is just part of the GDP. That's the end of chapter 5, part 1.